come on in. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the President's Lecture Series. Now, this is our first President's Lecture for the new fall semester. So I told our guest speaker, no pressure. It's going to be great. So tonight we have an extraordinary privilege of hearing from distinguished author John Gilstrap. John is an award-winning New York Times best-selling author of 30 thrillers, including the Victoria Emerson post-apocalyptic trilogy, the award-winning Jonathan Grave thriller series, and his most recent thriller series featuring retired FBI Director Irene Rivers. Now, that book is set right here in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, in fictional Jenkins County, which looks a lot like an amalgam of Jefferson, Berkeley, and Morgan counties. His nonfiction book, 6 Minutes to Freedom, is currently in development at Netflix to be released as a feature film in 2027. But that is the only one of a number of film projects that John has been involved with, having written 4 screenplays for Hollywood, adapting the works of Nelson DeMille, Norman MacLean, and Thomas Harris, as well as penning the screen adaptation for his own first novel, Nathan's Run. Now, John hastens to point out that while none of those projects ever made it to the screen, all of the checks for them cleared, okay? He tries not to take offense that on one occasion he was actually paid a handsome sum of money not to write a screenplay. And John says that's Hollywood, okay? So prior to the beginning of his writing career, John was a safety engineer specializing in explosives, hazardous materials, and hazardous waste. For 15 years, he served in the Fire and Rescue Service as a fire officer and EMT. It's almost as if he was training to write thrillers. A frequent keynote speaker at literary events, John teaches seminars on suspense writing techniques at a wide variety of venues, from local libraries to the Smithsonian Institution. In April, he will be a featured speaker at the annual meeting of the National Rifle Association in Houston, where he was an invited speaker. Within the community of writers, John continues to be a renowned expert on explosives, weapons platforms, and hazardous materials. He has a bachelor's degree in history from the College of William and Mary and a Master of Science degree in safety from the University of Southern California. We are so fortunate to have John and Joy, his wife who's with us this evening, his family, living in our community of Berkeley County, West Virginia. I hope you'll all be able to join us for a little dessert reception in the atrium after the presentation, but at this time, please join me in welcoming John Gilstrap. John?
Thank you very much. Thank you to Shepard. Thank you to President Hendricks. Thank you for all showing up. I like to answer the first question that I know everybody wants to answer when you look at me. No, I was never a professional basketball player. In fact, athletics were never my thing. Nerddom was my thing when I was growing up. When I was in high school, I was the editor of the high school newspaper that was called the Valor Dictus. Valor Dictus. In Fairfax County, it never occurred to people that adolescent boys went to high school. So I was the editor of the Valor Dictus. I was district champion debater. I was first tenor in the choir. Babe Magnet. Making up stories is the thing that I was good at. I was an avid reader. I was a voracious reader. I'm an omnivore. I'm still an omnivore. And making up stories, I don't know how many short stories I wrote as a kid, hundreds of them. It was a way of escaping into a world that I had control over. I didn't have a bad childhood. I had a weird childhood. And by writing stories, you just kind of, it's like playing, right? It's like reading a book, but in reverse. And I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed looking at pens. I enjoyed paper. I like the feel of pen on paper. And I had friends. I didn't have close friends, but I had friends. I did not play around. So when it came time to graduate from high school, as I was a good student, actually I was a very good student, I found out at my first high school reunion that I and my friends were traded as playing cards among teachers. That, okay, because we were really good students. We were good writers, we were good readers. All right, fine, you can have John and Steve and Greg, that was the straight A students, but you got to take Charlie Clark. That was how it worked. So this is my status, and I went to William & Mary. That was my chosen college. And I wanted to be a journalist. This is in the 70s. I wanted to be a journalist because of Watergate and Woodward and Bernstein. And I wanted to be Woodward because that was Robert Redford. I didn't want to be Bernstein because that was the other guy. So when I was young, my cousin, Nan, and Bob, they were in the State Department. And they had access through USIA, U.S. Information Agency, U.S. whatever it was. And they would have these lavish parties in Georgetown. And I met all of the pantheon of journalists at the time. Ellie Abel, the Cow brothers, Walter Cronkite. And John, what do you want to do? I want to be a journalist. Should I go to journalism school? No. You don't need journalism school. What you need is a degree in history or philosophy or government or something that where you learn something that you can apply to the news, right? A way to interpret the news. You don't need journalism school. The managing editor at the city desk is going to teach you everything you need to know about journalism school on the first day. More on that later because he was wrong. So I ended up going to William & Mary, which did not have a J school. So I ended up, I was a history major because William & Mary. I only took one creative writing class, and that was with him. I won't mention his name. He was a science fiction author of some note. I mean, he won the Hugo Award. He and vodka had a very close relationship. and this is in the days where the writing class was in his apartment. There's a bunch of folks. We all had a close relationship with vodka. And we would read our stories and trade them off. And this is the writer in residence. So it was actually an audition program. And I was trying to write commercial fiction. I was influenced by Alistair MacLean and Hardy Boys and all that kind of stuff. And everybody else in the class was influenced by Rod McEwen and Richard Bach. And if fiction made sense, it just wasn't very good. There was one guy named, forgive me, it was recorded, right? Lindsay Eck. There was never a more aptly named person on the planet. He washed his hair maybe twice during college. And he was in the class. I'm sorry, Lindsay, I know he's on Facebook. He would actually include staves of music in his fiction. Like, the 5 staves and the dots and all that. And the professor thought this was brilliant. And I was writing narrative fiction, and he hated it. So the Easy A, 2 semesters, Easy A, when I was done with this class, his name is Avram Davidson. Avram told me at the end of this class, John, you have no talent. He died before I published the first book. But he told me, you have no talent, and you shouldn't pursue this. This is a waste of your time. And this is a point that I want you to listen to. We get, if you have an artistic dream, people will want to talk you out of it. I don't really understand why, but if you've had an artistic dream, you know exactly what I'm talking about. People will want to talk you out of it. And this was a guy, I will speak ill of him because it was a really crappy thing to say. He was burned out. He was a writer in residence in a small college. That's not where he wanted to be. He was friends with Isaac Asimov, and he was angry. He threw a telephone at Isaac Asimov one time. So I don't know why he was angry, but it was important to him to take me down. And here's the thing. I listened. I listened to him. So, what do? I went off, I graduated, and I went to find a job at a newspaper where nobody talked to the people that I talked to about not needing journalism school. Everybody thought you needed that. So, and I didn't want to leave home. I was growing up in Northern Virginia. So, Alexandria Gazette, Springfield Independent, every newspaper said no, they're not going to hire me. But I did get hired at Construction Magazine, circulation 9. And I hated it. It was just horrible. It was a horrible, horrible job. But it was journalism. It wasn't really journalism, I found out, but I hated it. So during that time, I got involved with the volunteer fire service because it was exciting and what I was doing was not. And then by being involved with the volunteer fire service, I had found out there's a thing called a safety engineer. I never wanted to be a paid firefighter. I thought, okay, safety, be paid to do safety stuff. So I got hired on as an explosives safety engineer. Out of safety school. Now let's dial back a little bit. I have a bachelor's degree in safety, in history, and about, 4 or 5 courses under my belt in a graduate safety program. So John, come manage our explosive safety plant. Okay, why not, right? So I did that for 8 years, all fingers. All right, I won't show them to you. I got all my toes. I got both eyes. So I was a successful safety engineer. But I learned a lot. I learned about management. I learned about a lot of other things. But writing was just gone, right? Memos. I wrote great memos. I mean, really compelling memos. Brings tears to your eyes, my memos. So about 5 years after college, there was a reunion of Avram's class. And there was one girl, Bria Combs was her name. There might have been some alcohol involved. And so John, what are you writing? She was the one out of the whole class, I think it was 8, maybe 9 people in the class. She was the one who actually understood what I was trying to do. And she said, so John, what are you writing? And I said, memos, nothing. By then I was married, had a kid. And she said, how dare you? I said, how dare I what? How dare you not write? I said, okay, let's talk about this. And she said, God gave you a talent. You don't have the right not to exercise that talent. And I kind of laughed it off, and she said, no. You have a special talent. I've read your stuff. It's not well developed. Avram is a dick. He didn't know what he was talking about. You have a talent. You have an obligation to develop it. You have an obligation to sell it, but you have an obligation to develop it. So I thought, okay. It just resonated with me. So I pulled out my typewriter, because that's where we were in life. And I hammered out a couple of books. They all sucked. Never tried to sell them because I knew they sucked. But 3 of them, right, all told, each of them sucked less than the one that preceded it. Right? It's a voyage of discovery. And then I wrote a 4th book. And the 4th book was called Nathan. I called it Nathan with an exclamation point, like Oliver or Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm not good with titles. So I done with it. I thought, remember, I'm a voracious reader. I showed it to Joy and said, Joy, you've got to read this. And she said, no. And I said, why? And she said, because every time I read your stories, you get depressed. I tell you what I think, and then you get angry, and you mope around the house, and then I don't want to do that anymore. I said, but this one's good. She said, you said that about the last one. Okay, that's fair, but this one is really good. I talked her into it. So she sat down, and this one I thought was really good. Hand to God. I watched her read the book. No pressure. A little like being the first lecture of the season. I watched her read the book, and I watched her read the book to know where she was taking breaks. If you take a break at a chapter, I write short chapters. If you need to pee, you can hold out to the end of a short chapter. If you stop in the middle of a short chapter, it's a bad chapter. Right? I write thrillers. So that there's something fundamentally wrong with the chapter. That's my theory, Gilstrap's theory. So at the end of the book, Nathan's Run is about what became Nathan's Run. It's about a 12-year-old boy in a juvenile detention center who kills the guard and runs away. And the whole world is chasing him. The whole world thinks that he's a cop killer. And kind of he is. What they don't understand is he killed in self-defense. And while the cops are chasing him, so is the hitman who hired the guard to try to kill him. So here you got this little boy who's just trying to survive on his own. That's the story. Okay, it's a pretty cool story. So when she finishes the story, she's crying. Well, this can mean two things. Either you're supposed to cry. It's that kind of a book. So either I hit the mark or, crap, I got to tell him again. Well, in this case, it was good. And she thought it was good. Now, at this point in my life, I owned my own consulting company, safety and environmental consulting company, which was, shall we say, struggling. Struggling to the point that we were canceling newspapers and I was paying my employees when I wasn't paying me. That kind of struggling. So we needed $25,000, like badly. And I knew Joy liked it, liked the story. My dad liked the story. Let's not go there, but that's like a really big deal. So I knew that the average book paid $5,000, average first novel back then, because I read all the stuff. Well, empirically, if Joy liked it, my dad liked it, my book is 5 times better than the average first novel. So mathematically, empirically, I knew this one had to be worth $25,000. This is my way out, right? So I fire off a query letter. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's where you need to find a literary agent. And the literary agent then represents your book to take it on to the publisher, who will then buy the book and then pay you money. So, but the literary agent is essential. So I fire off query letters, 10 query letters, send them off via US mail. There is no email. So I send them off via US mail. Within 5 days, US mail. Within 5 days, I get them all back, rejected. How bad did that letter suck? Let's talk about query letters for a second. There's rejection. Rejection is part of the entertainment business. Rejection is a part of the entertainment business. Some of it is ugly. Some rejection letters, most rejection letters then, were this photocopy, 130th generation photocopy that you could barely read, that said, "Dear," and they write in John, "we love your work, however," and then there's the soft landing. My favorite rejection, in the sense that it was just cruel, they sent me back my letter. They didn't send their own letter. They sent me my letter in my self-addressed stamped envelope with a stamp, like thump, thump, that said no. Come on, how cruel can you get? So I got the first 10 back and I realized I'm an engineer at heart. What do I know? They don't hate my story. They haven't read my story. They hate my letter. So I go back and I re-engineer the letter. And more rejections. 27 rejections. Keep going, right? There's nothing to it. You put a stamp on it, you go, and then you check the mailbox, and then you get another rejection. It's kind of a thing that goes on for weeks. Well, until I was in Winton, North Carolina, on February 23rd, 1995, teaching a class. It was a barn burner. I'm a pretty good instructor. I was teaching a barn burner class on the Comprehensive Emergency Response Compensation and Liability Act. It's required 8-hour training, okay, if you do hazardous waste. I'm telling you, I had tears in their eyes. It was great. So we just come back from lunch, And the people are just, and there's a knock on the door, and a lady came in, somebody's secretary with one of those pink slips, a message thing. And I knew what happened, because it happens. One of these managers has told their secretary, get me out of this class, give me a message halfway through. And I look at it, and it said, John Gilstrap, call Molly Friedrich. Well, that's one of the agents that I had queried. And her nickname was $1 Million Moll. It's like, okay, this is one of the A-list agents. So I said, okay, it's a break time. The guy said, we've only been here for 5 minutes. It's break time! So I'm back, and I call the number, and I hear, oh, this is John. This is Molly. She's a smoker. New Yorker. I really love your book. I'd like to represent it, but you got to make a change. I said, okay, that's fine. You got to change the title. Okay. Anything else? Nope, that's it. You got to change the title. Okay, I can do that. Change the title. So go back. God knows, if you went from Winton, North Carolina, whatever's happening at their hazardous waste sites, I'm sorry. I have no idea. No idea what's happened since then. So that was February 23rd. On March 1st, I get a call at my office. Oh, John, this is Molly. We got an offer on your book. $250,000 2-book deal. That's what I said. So, of course, I turned it down. What? Well, it didn't feel right to me. Okay? But they countered. And she floated out this number. It's the number, okay? It's a number. And you said yes to that one, right? Said, oh, yeah, of course I said yes to that. And you hang up. So I was in my office, in Woodbridge, Virginia, and Joy was at home with our son and the dog. And so I called Joy, and I said, we got an offer on the book. And I tell her the number, and she said, no. No, it's a good book, but let's be honest, it's not that good a book. And so I have to arrange this conference call from home to New York so that Molly and Joy can talk together. And yeah, so that's what happens. That was the first sale, and then there were 23 countries to follow, each of them a separate sale. So that was March 1st. March 3rd, phone rings in the office. Now it's Pavlovian. The phone rings, and it's Molly again. And she said, remember what Avram told me? You have no talent? This was Molly called and said, how does it feel to be the most talked about author in New York? Yeah. The answer is really good. Doesn't last long, It's a qualification, lasts for a day, maybe. And I was just, stunned. It was big news, all that. And she said, so what are you doing tonight? And I said, well, it's Friday night. Friday night is pizza and movie night. And she said, well, funny you mentioned movie. There's 7 studios bidding on the film rights. And we think it'll settle tonight. Do you think you can stick by your phone tonight for the settlement? Well, let me see. Let me check my calendar. So I go home. It has California time is working, and we're at home. And so it's about 7 o'clock that night. Phone rings, and it's a guy named Matthew Snyder. They say, hello, I'm Matthew Snyder. I'm your film agent. Well, that's nice. How did I get you? So they get that through the... So anyway, the bidding goes on. People drop out. Now it's about 10 o'clock at night. And it's between Fox, 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers, and Disney. Disney and Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers had this offer, and it was good for 10 minutes. And 10 minutes in Hollywood is 9 minutes and 60 seconds. So there's only 2 people in the race. So if you got 2 people in the race and one of them bows out, there is no competition, right? So there's 10 minutes that the offer is good. So Warner Brothers says, tell your client, and so Matthew's on the line. I said, well, are we taking it? He said, no, we still got 8 minutes. Let's play a little poker. So Molly, the literary agent's on the phone too. They're talking about kids, how are things, and going back and forth. Every minute on the minute, Matthew has to go off to take a call from the Mouse House, from Disney. I'm supposed to tell my client he's got exactly 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes left. Finally got down to about 3 minutes. And I said, okay, guys, stop. I wouldn't recognize any of you on the street. This is all new to me. Take the offer. Just take the offer. And Matt said, wait, I got Disney online. He goes off and he comes back and says, okay, Disney matched the offer. I know it's late in the East Coast. I'm just going to bounce them against each other and take the highest offer if you're okay with that. Why wouldn't I be okay with that? Well, we thought you might have a preference for producer. The hell is a producer? And why would I care? Well, it turns out that I should have cared because you've never seen the movie Nathan's Run, right? So neither have I. Because it was never made. So that's the story of Nathan's Run, and it moves on. Now it's time to write a second book. There's been a lot of money put out for this first book. And there's a lot of money that's put out for the advertising and marketing for this first book. New York and California have paid a lot of money on me, and nobody knows me. So my agent says, you got to write the second book now before the first book comes out and reality hits. Right? So I did. And bidding, yada yada, another big deal, and now, that whole thing is replicated. So now there's like a whole lot of money invested in this unknown in 2 books before the first book has come out. Well, Nathan's Run did very well, but it did not earn out over $1 million. I mean, that's like 150,000 copies in hardcover. I mean, it's just not done, right? So they lost money on me, and that's my fault. Anything in publishing, anything in the arts, it's always the artist's fault. I get to keep it, right? That's not the issue. I get to keep it all. But what happens is, for the second book, which is a different publisher, they realize that they've really lost a lot of money because the first book didn't do well. They don't have a launching platform for the second book, so they pull back all of their marketing money. And then I'm done. I mean, there are 2 more books that followed. They paid almost nothing, and it's called remaindered in place. Just kind of put them on the shelf, and they don't do anything. So, most talked about author in New York at age 38 can't give a book away at age 42, 43. Because I took a big advance, and it didn't work out. So this is the nature of the entertainment business. It's not, I don't blame anybody. I mean, it's just the way it is. Now, I'm of the nature that, okay, I'll keep going. I had another job, I was doing other things. So I kept writing. But here's what happens. People don't take your phone calls anymore. People don't want to be in pictures with you anymore. Like you go to a writer's conference, and there's like a group picture. They really don't want you to be a part of it because you're the guy that used to be, but aren't anymore. Okay? So that hurts my feelings. We were at a bar at Thriller Fest, which is the international thriller writers. It's a big deal. These are really good friends of mine. And this one lady writer, she's a medical thriller writer, came up to me and said, John, I'm so sorry about what happened to your career. So what happened to my career? I said, well, it's kind of trashed. I said, no, it's not. I mean, it's a bad spot, but I'm still writing. The issue here, the point to remember here, is I wasn't done. People thought I was done, but I wasn't done. Didn't know how I was going to get out of it. I couldn't give away a book. I wrote a book called Living Will, which was a really cool book. It was about a terminally ill girl who goes on the run with an escaped convict. It's kind of a love romance thriller thing that I thought was really good. I thought it was very filmable. I couldn't give it away. Could not give it away. Nobody. My agent said, John, no, don't. This is not the time for this book right now. So, all right. Pure serendipity. I met a guy through a Rotarian friend named Kurt Muse. Kurt Muse is a real-life hero. He ran a radio network against Manuel Noriega in the late 80s. Manuel Noriega was a bad guy. He murdered a lot of people, murdered a lot of Kurt's friends. Kurt was a Rotarian, and he didn't like that his friends were being killed, so he got together with his Rotarian buddies and put together this radio network, and he became persona non grata, public enemy #1 in Panama, and was ultimately captured and put in a political prison. And from the prison, he was leaking out information to the United States intelligence agencies about what was going on. It's a complicated story. His family fled the country by themselves because they were, as soon as he was arrested, they were in danger. So they actually, 15-year-old daughter and 12-year-old son, fled Panama. It's just this wonderful thriller. I'm not a reporter. I'm not a journalist. So I wrote this story. I got it down on paper. I'm the only guy that got Delta Force to talk to him. You know, I got this whole thing done. I couldn't give it away because I had a failing record as a thriller writer, and I'm not a journalist. I had the story. But wouldn't you know, there was a guy way back when, Steve Zacharias. When Nathan's Run came out, and I was a big hero, Steve ran this little company called Kensington Publishing. And back then, I considered him a bottom feeder. He was certainly not like HarperCollins and Warner Books where I was. But he was a real fan of my work. So when nobody else would talk to me for what became 6 Minutes to Freedom, I told my agent, reach out to Steve Zacharias, see if he'll publish it. And he did. He paid $1.95 for this thing. I mean, just like paid very, very little. This book sold like crazy. It sold, in 2006, it came out at military bases across the world. It sold like crazy. And the research for that set up my Jonathan Graves series, which has sold like crazy. 6 Minutes to Freedom is the book that I had to fire my agent, my first agent over, because she wouldn't represent it because of all that other stuff, right? That's the book that was going to be a feature film next year, okay? Because I stuck with it, and Steve Zacharias took a chance on me, and I remembered that guy that I had met a long time ago. There's a lot of serendipity that's involved with this. There's a lot of remembering who was there for you. And maybe sometimes those that you weren't as nice to. I was never mean, but they expressed their desire to help, and maybe I didn't take it as seriously as I should. And he was there for me. And 6 Minutes to Freedom did, like I said, very well. And then when it came time to buy No Mercy, which is the first of the Jonathan Graves series, they took a chance on me. They'd never done a story like this before. Jonathan Graves is a freelance hostage rescue specialist. And I took a very small advance. I'm never taking a big advance again, because I'm not just doing that. I earn out my advances within a couple of months now. But I engineer it that way, because they spend that money into marketing and all that. So we have this great business relationship that's going on. There's 17 books in the Jonathan Graves series. In the middle of this, remember the book Living Will? It came out as Nick of Time and also did very well. Because now it's not by the guy that can't sell a book anymore, it's by the guy that's selling really well, so it must be a good book. Same book, same book. Those people that didn't want me in their pictures now ask me for blurbs for their book. It's that kind of business, okay? So, this is where we are today. You go from hero to nothing, you kind of claw your way back, and the consistent part of all of this is just not giving up. And this is the message I want to, the meat of what I want to talk about. If you're an artist, whatever it is you do, I'm a writer. I don't know if y'all, whoever here, I don't know if you're a writer, if you're an artist, sculptor, singer, dancer, you know, whatever it is. Your art is intrinsic to the art. It has nothing to do with your sales. Those are different things. It's really nice to sell. Selling is better than not selling. But it's the process of getting the art out there that's important. For the parents who hear their kids say, hey, I want to go and become an actor. I want to go to New York, become a dancer on Broadway. You know, it's a scary thing to hear. We're trying to talk them out of it because the chances of success are like nothing. But those are the chances that every successful performer, every successful artist, writer, faced. They all faced the same chances. And those that succeeded, the ones that separate the ones who succeeded, are the ones that kept going. I was rejected 27 times. I could have stopped then. I didn't. It was the 28th when I got accepted. And I was accepted by the one that I never in the world thought would accept the agent that I never thought would take me, because I had been rejected by far less powerful agents. There's just a lot of moving parts to all of this. I hear people complain about the state of the publishing industry today. Nobody wants to bring in new work. It's shut down for new writers. That's not true. It's just not true. The industry is hungry for new writers, but it's hungry for new writers that study the craft and are willing to keep at it. There's 1,000 reasons to be rejected. You know, the fact is, if you wrote a brilliant book, if you wrote a book that was much better than what I write, and it was in the same, and you sent it to my agent, and it was in the same era, you know, the same subject matter as I have, she's going to reject it, because she's not going to put you in competition with me. I'm already her client, right? I mean, there's 1,000 reasons to be rejected. There's also 1,000 reasons to quit. You get tired, you know, whatever the case may be, and that's fine. There's absolutely no shame in quitting. But just remember that the point you stop, that's where failure happens. Failure happens when you say you're done. It doesn't happen before that. As long as you get up, as long as you say, well, that really sucked. You know, I can't give a book away. This is soul stealing. This just really hurts. I mean, it really hurts. But if I quit, I'm done. If I quit, I declare failure. And that's the point. You declare the failure. Failure cannot be inflicted upon you. It's your choice. You're the one who says, okay, I'm going to walk away from this. I'm done. I'm done. I can't take it. It's too much for me, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You just have to look in the mirror and answer that question and be very comfortable with the answer when you say, how dare you? Thank you.
Fascinating talk, John. Fascinating talk. But you did not tell us about your good friend, John Wayne. Question about John Wayne.
I had a brief encounter with John Wayne. Talking about, a little off topic. I was in John Wayne's last film performance when I was in high school. Excuse me, when I was in college. The Perry Como Christmas special in William and Mary. There was a tavern scene in Chowning's Tavern, and John Wayne did the good tidings to you wherever you are. Perry Como was absolutely ripped. I mean, it was a 3-hour shoot, and all of the cheers thing, it was real beer. And he was chugging them down. John Wayne was a professional, and he's just getting angrier and angrier and angrier. I think he was also sick at the time. And so it was all done. I went up and I said, Mr. Wayne, I'm a real fan. Can I have your autograph? And he said, no. Okay. I still like him. He's John Wayne. Any other questions from anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm so interested in what's next.
What's next for me?
Yes, I mean, with all of these different thrillers, is there one different area, another path you'd like to go down and explore?
Well, right now I'm under contract for another one, the Irene Rivers series, the one that's set here. I'm writing the next one of that. And that's due in January, and then I have another Jonathan Grave book that's due, and then we'll see. There's some movie news dancing around on other stuff that I can't talk about, so we'll see. My involvement with the movie stuff probably won't happen. The story that Mary alluded to about being paid not to write the screenplay, when I first sold 6 Minutes to Freedom, I attached myself as the writer in the deal. So if this becomes a movie, I'm the screenwriter, because it's a big deal to be a screenwriter, because you join the union, and you get screeners at award season and all that. And as a screenwriter, you have a quote. You get each job establishes your worth, and that's your quote. So the next job pays at least that. So they paid me my quote, not to have me write the screenplay, because apparently they wanted somebody else in the credits, which was, we built a bar in our basement with it. So, yes, ma'am.
Did you keep your other professional life going at the same time that you were writing?
Did I keep my professional life going at the same time I was writing? My day job. For books 1 and 2, I did, because 1 in a row is not a trend. 2 in a row felt like a trend, plus it was a really fat bank account. So for about 8 years, I stopped. But then I'm a type A guy, and my son was little when we started, and then he was going off to school, and Joy went back to work, and I got tired of just playing with my imaginary friends. So I went back to work at a trade association for 10 years. And I may have sounded immodest, but I'm a really good safety engineer, and I enjoy it until I didn't. So then I retired. That was about 10 or 11 years ago. So now I just write full time.
And then if I could have 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you write? And what is do you write a certain number of hours every day? Do you have respite from writing?
I procrastinate and then panic. And then panic. When I look at the calendar and I realize, oh my God, I owe a book in 3 months. I better get down to this. And it's always been that way.
And is it joyous to write?
Yeah, I mean, is it joyous to write? Yeah, I mean, it's not the way it's portrayed. It's a job. When it gets down to it, I got to produce. I'm part of a factory. If I don't produce, I signed a contract to produce a book, and this next one is due on January 15th. If I don't deliver on January 15th, that means that the copy editor who's under contract, I'm making the dates up because I have no idea what happens, but the copy editor who's under contract for January 31st now has to be pushed someplace else, but they might not have time for that. And the press run that is then scheduled for a certain date, now that is a problem. And then the marketing it is attendant to, so it's like a factory. And if I don't meet my deadline, all of that gets screwed up. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Often said you read about that write 20, 30 novels. Are they actually writing all of that, or do they actually hire people to help them do parts?
I have written 30, and I wrote every single one of them. There are some, like James Patterson writes, I think, 12 novels a year, and 11 of them are written by other people. But he gives them cover credit. And he does one of them a year, as I understand it. And I understand he pays well, and he's very much involved in. Right. Tom Clancy writes a book every year, but he's been dead, so that's written by somebody else. That's
Stuff like
yeah, right. Yes, sir.
Who are your, as a reader, top 5 writers?
Who are my top 5 writers? I can't do top 5. I don't know. I read a lot of my friends. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm an omnivore. I like discovering new people. I get books for blurbs sent that I read, so I can't really do that. Off the top of my head, there's Revis Wortham is a great writer, very underappreciated. He's from Texas. Jeffrey Deaver. I think Harlan Coben is a good writer. Tends to write the same book over and over, but he's a really good writer. Sorry, Harlan. I like Grisham. Tess Gerritsen writes a good book. Heather Graham writes a good. There's a lot of authors that are very good. Yeah.
Anything out for Victoria?
No, anything new for Victoria Emerson. That was a trilogy. That was a post-apocalyptic trilogy. She's kind of had her run for right now. That got really dark. I signed a contract in 2019 to write this post-apocalyptic, no zombies. Okay, this is kind of the old school nuclear strike kind of thing. 2019. I started writing it in 2020. I was writing about the apocalypse during the apocalypse, right? And it was really hard. It was that was a hard series to write. So at the end of the third book, I was like, okay, this is now a trilogy. I was depressed. It was dark. But it's a very good, a lot of people like that, and I like it too. I think it's Joy's favorite series. Yes, sir.
I have a question. It's just, I like to read thrillers and things like that, so I decided to go read the Bourne Identity, the Bourne Supremacy, read the book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, that's not the movie.
Well, it's set in Vietnam, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Southeast Asia, the whole kind of thing. So when you write a book and you think about the movie, are you concerned about how true they are to your story?
No. And a couple of reasons for that. One, I have adapted other people's work, and I know that the last person I want to talk to or meet is the author, because I know what their version is, but their version, their 700-page book has to be boiled down to a 120-page screenplay. So a movie is not a translation of the book. A movie is a different art form that is based on the book.
Keyword
Right.
based.
Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Oh.
Go ahead, Mary.
So we have the Contemporary American Theater Festival, CATF. You're living in the community. Do you see an opportunity for any of your great stories to be converted to a play?
I see opportunity for my story to be converted to a play. Yes. However, the CATF, and I've seen all the CATF since we've lived here, they tend to be much darker than what I write. You know, much more focused on stuff that I don't write. So I'm not sure there's an appetite for the producers of CATF for my work. Yeah, but I would love to see it as a play. Yeah.
As a writer who's been so prolific, do you find that you have moments of writer's block, stalling out? I know that you said you procrastinate until you have to, but sometimes in that, do you have to, do you find yourself locked up as well?
I don't, I think, I want to sound catty here. I don't believe in writer's block. I think writer's block is getting lost in a plot. And here's really what I do to solve that. I probably write 25% of my books by hand, which goes back to my love of pens and all of that. So I convert from the computer to fountain pen, always fountain pen, hate ballpoints. And there's something about that that will kind of break the story list. I don't know if that works for everybody, but that's for me. But writer's block is forgive me, it's an excuse not to sit down and write. And I think that's great when you're not under contract, but I don't think there's such a thing as surgeon's block or lawyer's block. You know, I'm sorry, dude, you're gonna have to go to death row because I don't have it in me to defend you today. You know, it doesn't happen that way. And so you got to take a professional approach.
That's fair, thank you.
Yeah.
John, does your narrative ever take off by itself?
My narrative ever take off by itself? No. I get inspired. I get into the moment. Okay, for me, writing it's schizophrenia. You know, it's kind of, you go into, I go into when I'm in the zone, whatever that is. The reality of what I'm writing is more intense than the reality of where I am. So it's like when you're a kid, you go and you pretend. And so I guess maybe that's where it takes off, but my characters go with firm discipline. And but those are the good times. I don't know if you were on the show. I do WR&R in the mornings a few days a week. And we had a hypnotist on. Were you for that? Okay, so I described this, and he said that that's the same as self-hypnosis. But when you get into the zone, I'm sure you've all been there at one point or another, where you look up and a couple of hours have passed, and you produced an enormous amount of work, and you really don't know how you did it. That's, on a good day of writing, that's what will happen, and it'll be wow. And it'll be good stuff. Right? That's the opposite of writer's block. Yeah.
Have you ever thought of an alternative ending after a book's been published, or wanted to change something, or thought, oh, this is actually
I struggle over endings sometimes, but once it's decided, it's decided. I don't, you can't second think yourself. I have brought characters back to life, I've gotten up in the middle of the night and brought characters back to life because I feel bad about it. Bill Stubblefield was going to be the raunchiest character I've ever written. I mean, just every year there's a not a raffle. It's a charity thing where people bid on, and one of the things we bid on is to be a character in my book. And it's always a bad guy. And the bad guy is always killed, and they never die easily. And Bill it was for the hospice of the Panhandle, and Bill had donated very graciously. And as I'm writing this character, this is Bill Stubblefield, he's a big name in the community. As I'm writing, I thought, oh God, this is such a horrible character. He's a great character, but he's just horrible. So I can't do this to Bill. So I called him and said, do you mind being a good guy? So I made him a good-looking 23-year-old computer nerd. So it's
Easily identified.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So no one has asked you this, so I'm going to. ChatGPT.
Well, I don't worry about it. It's a true story. A few weeks ago, I'm going to go sit. I had back surgery a while ago. My back's hurting, so I'm going to sit on the edge of the stage. A few weeks ago, I was late on a short story, and I just wanted to see what would happen. So I write a 5,000-word short story in the style of John Gilstrap or whatever the topic was. I wasn't going to use it. I just wanted to see what happened. First of all, I was devastated by what they think of my writing style. It's just bad writing. There's no heart in it. So I don't worry about it yet for fiction. However, I will use it for give me a list of 12 names for 12 common names in Kansas City, something like that. And then, because names per se aren't important to me, they're labels to put on characters. So that way it's useful, but not for the narrative. Yes?
Do you still sing? Oh, sorry. Do you still sing?
I did until a few years ago. And then
You have a wonderful Young choir.
There it is.
Always looking for men.
Okay, all right, and tenors no less, right? Yeah. So no, I did until maybe 10 years ago, and then that light went out. Yes.
The fastest on the board, so I have to be careful what I say. But I think there might be an audience for something a little lighter.
One would hope.
I didn't mistake you now. How did you finish up in West Virginia or Berkeley County?
How did we land here? I've always loved West Virginia. I've set books in West Virginia for a long time. And I grew up in Northern Virginia, and quite honestly, when we were growing up, not so much Joy, she grew up in Alexandria. I grew up in western Fairfax County, Burke, that area, which was a lot like Berkeley County is now when I was growing up. And it just got so big and loud and crowded, and I don't commute, so why stay there? And we moved during COVID. We actually built a house during COVID, and the property values, there's such a discrepancy. It made a lot of sense. We love it here. Absolutely love it here. Yes, ma'am. All the way in the back.
What is your pre-writing process? You talk about disciplining your planters, just how much do you plan ahead? What's your stuff? Do you write it out?
You mean like on a daily basis? What do I do? I don't outline.
For the story, yeah. Like when I try to write a book, I don't know. Like I've written one, and I don't know if I should write the whole outline of the book and then start in, or that's kind of.
There's no should. There's no should. There's this gospel according to me. Okay, completely untrained, self-taught, right? I find I've done a lot of seminars, a lot of training stuff, much more craft-oriented than this. I have found that the MFA students in particular, meaning no disrespect to anybody, the MFA students tend to be more locked up on the right way to do things, and that gets in their way. I'm much more, my approach is have fun. Just start writing the story. That's what I do. I get a scene in my head. I know who the stars are because I write series, and kind of have a premise, and I just start writing, and a lot of it is crap, but that's okay. It's a first draft, and sooner or later, for me, creativity is a flow, and it's like priming a pump, and once the flow starts, then you're in it, and in that process, I discover the story, and that's what rewrites are about. It's not live theater. It's you go back and you fix it. And that's, somebody asked me if it's pleasurable or somebody in here. That's the pleasure of it. It's going in and just finding the story. That's why I'll tell Joy I finally found it. Now I know what I'm writing. But that can take days, weeks, But the process itself is to enjoy the flow. But my deadline is one deadline, and it's way out there, right? I don't have to turn in stuff in between, perhaps, that students do. So, but enjoy the process. And if outlines work for you, a friend of mine, Jeffrey Deaver, writes like 60-page single-space outlines chapter by chapter. So he literally, when he starts to actually write the book, he can, if he gets tired of writing chapter 3, he can go write chapter 35 for a while and skip. My head would explode. I can't do that. But that's the way it works for him. Yeah.
Have you ever been surprised by one of your endings?
Yes.
How'd that come up?
Yes, it usually is. The surprise comes where I'm done. It's like I have another chapter planned or whatever, and I realize, no, this is it. This is the perfect outline. Outline. Yes, sir.
I was struck by your point about sending out all these letters and getting rejections. And I find my oldest son, who recently graduated from college, is finding that actually nobody responds. And he's actually pursuing journalism, and he's really a purist. He doesn't like the artificial intelligence. He wrote about 150 articles at the University of Richmond. And he's saying, Dad, sometimes I wonder if you play by the rules, is there still an opportunity? And I'm waxing poetic here, but I really like the point you made that you've got to stay with it. And I think our young people especially need to hear that you can do the right thing and have a productive career. I never have a hard time telling you. The reality is AI is going to be doing a lot of the journalism that we come to love and so forth. But it's refreshing to hear your message. I'd love to see if we could get that message out to our students here at Shepherd, and letting them know that there still is a place for the ability to respond to a resume, the courtesy of responding to an email, even if you're not going to accept the person. There's something to be said about the character that is involved. I just really wanted to thank you for the message.
Oh, you're very welcome. And let me also say there's also a place for breaking the rules. I think that and this is where I come from, authority and I do not get along very well. Clive Cussler, who did Raise the Titanic and Dirk Pitt and all that, when he tells a story in his speech, he's not with us anymore. When Clive was first trying to find an agent for Raise the Titanic back in, the 70s, maybe early 80s, he couldn't find one. Just nobody wanted to touch Raise the Titanic, snore. So he went to a store and created stationery. Again, this was before email, right? So you had to print up stationery of a fictitious literary agency. And the letter was essentially, dear other literary agent, I'm going out of business for whatever reason. I have this one client, Clive Cussler, who is brilliant, and he really needs an agent like you. So please take a look at his stuff. So they sent it off. That's how he got his agent. And he waited 10 years to tell his agent that's how they did it. And by then he was this huge runaway best-selling author. But that's how he got it, right? And now it's a funny story. It's sometimes rules are rules. Not a law. It's a rule, right? So.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
I've seen another side of John Gilstrap. That was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed
Thank you
it.
very much.
Thank you.
Clyde Cussler. Next time at the house, let me show you a picture. I'm going to be the new admiral behind Sandecker.
Oh,
Yeah, Cussler wrote me a letter on my retirement saying that I would.
Really?
Yeah.